Okay, so we don't waste too much time. And I'm not going to do too much talking. I've had a sore throat for the last 3 days. So if you'll forgive me for being kind of silent, I'll read, but that's probably about it.
Your voice sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, it's just I don't know if it's allergies or something, but like I don't want to do TMIs. But yeah, it's kind of just a scratchy
Yeah.
throat. So 17, um, starting with this version. Um, I call the most common version.
Okay. Mm.
Um,
By the way, was the person who you thought might come on, was that Parlin?
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Uh, is it open so that you'll know if she's trying to get in later on? Because
yeah,
she's
yeah.
okay. Okay, great. Yeah,
I'll just have
she's
to
in
remind me to look every once in a while. Sometimes I get so caught up in this, I forget to
she's
look.
She's in India,
Oh, okay.
and so right now it's 6:30 in the morning. But she wanted to come, so we'll
Oh,
Wow.
see if she makes it or not.
yeah.
Okay, so 17. The very highest is barely known by men. Then comes that which they know and love. Then that which is feared. Then that which is despised. He who does not trust enough will not be trusted. When actions are performed without necessary speech, people say, "We did it."
Oh,
Short and
yeah.
sweet.
It's beautiful, beautiful translation. Yeah.
And this is from what's the Tao box. It's these little cards.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, and they don't. Sometimes they don't really match up. So we'll see. They're real hit and miss.
Yeah.
This one's titled "Trust and Love." In the first age of mankind, the people had respect for their superiors. In the second age, they served and flattered them. In the third age, they feared them. In the fourth age, they despised them. Where love is lacking, trust does not arise. How careful we must be in our attitudes. When we have acted from love, we know we are true.
Yeah. It's beautiful, but highly interpreted and not that close to the original text.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah, so
have
we have
my
lots.
own. I have my own translation.
So we go around. I do my
Yeah.
4 translations, and then
Oh, okay.
Brent usually does
Fantastic.
his, which I think is Mitchell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Stephen Mitchell.
And then you share whatever translations you have,
Yeah.
and then we discuss it. So that's kind of
Okay.
the format we've been following. So this is from The Essential Tao by Thomas Cleary.
Okay.
Very great leaders. Very great leaders in their domains are only known to exist. Those next best are beloved and praised. The lesser are feared and despised. Therefore, when faith is insufficient and there is disbelief, it is from the high value placed on words. Works are accomplished, tasks are completed, and ordinary folk all say they are acting spontaneously. So, as you can see, they're all very different. That's why we read so many different versions.
Yeah.
The
There,
first,
there is a reason for it why it's so different.
Yeah.
Because the original text in the format and also the language, there is many things that are omitted. So really, it's up to the reader to actually translate correctly based on the context.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can see that. I'm excited to hear your version. So
Yeah, it's not only the translation, even among Chinese scholars, they can have a very different view about how the text should be read. For some chapters, this one is a relatively less controversial, I would say.
my last one is just the Tao Te Ching by Ursula Le Guin. So And
That's
this is
one of the earliest, isn't it? Very earliest translation.
um
Maybe.
no, I don't think so. This one's
Oh,
pretty new. She's actually was a
okay.
science fiction writer. So
Oh, okay. So I mixed up with the another one with a similar surname, I think.
okay.
Was it? Yeah. Okay.
So this one is entitled Acting Simply. True leaders are hardly known to their followers. Next after them are the leaders the people know and admire. After them, those they fear. After them, those they despise. To give no trust is to get no trust. When the work's done right, with no fuss or boasting, ordinary people say, "Oh, we did it."
Yeah, very similar to the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very close to the original text.
Okay, should I read Stephen Mitchell's?
Please.
Okay.
Yes.
When the master governs, the people are hardly aware that he exists. Next best is a leader who is loved. Next, one who is feared. The worst is one who is despised. If you don't trust the people, you make them untrustworthy. The master doesn't talk, he acts. When his work is done, the people say, "Amazing, we did it all by ourselves."
Yeah, that's a very close. That's also very similar to the first and the last one. Alice, you did. I know, Michel. His translation, his version is very beautifully interpreted. I would say, largely interpreted, but this one is quite close to the original text. I would say, yeah.
I read just recently that he didn't translate this at all. He just looked at all these different versions and came up
Yeah,
with some. That's so.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
So obviously, it's
right.
mostly interpreted. I think a lot of these. I think they're all sort of interpreted because everybody's had different experiences in their lives, and everybody has different, opinions on what's more important than anything else. And so somebody will read it. Even if it's the original, I mean, they'll read it and then they'll put it down in such a way that they think that this is the best version. But we're all in a bubble of perception, aren't we? So we're limited by our perceptual abilities. And so even what did the original guy think when he wrote what he wrote? If so many people have so many different ways of looking at it, I mean, he may not even have been clear. It's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, that's a possibility too. And I think probably the main reason because the original text doesn't need to expand to make sense if it's been translated or even been understood by Chinese people themselves. It needs to be expanded, and that inevitably there will be some sort of interpretation or understanding involved.
Yeah, plus the culture was different. We have to use different like stories to describe things, whereas back in the day when people were farming all day long, that's a totally different time, and so we got to, there's so many variables involved in all that. Yeah.
Yeah. I do did a bit of comparison. I think most of the reason that particularly those are highly deviated, I mean highly different among the translations or interpretation, are largely due to either the original text wasn't clear or actually the way we read it can be so different. And for lots of translators, because the original text is seemingly making no sense to them, or they feel reader cannot comprehend, and they start to interpret, and
Right.
and that can deviate a lot from the original text.
So, can you read yours?
Yeah. Would you mind me share my screen? So probably easier. You can see it as well. I have some notes as well. Let me see if it works. Oh, I can't share.
Okay, let me.
Yeah. You obviously you need to set.
Okay. Close.
Oh, looks like, yeah, this one. See if it will be clear to you. I may need to disable my video. Let me see if I need disable my video. Can you see, guys, clearly?
No, not yet.
No, it's not coming up yet.
Ah,
It's tricky sometimes when you try and share.
yeah.
Yeah. If you don't do it exactly right, it doesn't work.
Well, you're pulling that up. Do you mind if I share some thoughts on this?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So I think a while back, Brent and I, we were talking about the different levels of like the unknowable, the unknown, and the known. And I think that's kind of what this is going through at the first. Like the very high list is barely known by men. So that would be that love intelligence and that, you know, or the way or God or, you know, however you want to label it. That's that divine energy. So that's barely known by men because most people don't stop to actually listen. They don't quiet themselves to be present in this moment and listen to the voice of God, if you want to call it God. And then comes that which they know and love. So those that are close to them and that which they do consider, at least that they can show love for, that they know love in that aspect. So family and friends and those close to you. And then there's that which is feared, which I think would be the unknown. And most people, you know, they say that it's the fear of the unknown. It's not the unknown that they fear. It's just fear of the unknown. And then finally which is despised, which is just that base emotion, you know, that hated and loathed. So it kind of goes through those level of emotions. You've got divine love, you've got kindness and like normal love. Then you have that which is feared. And then you have that which is hated. So I thought that was kind of interesting how they kind of break down life and emotions in those kind of levels. So I'll go ahead and stop so you can pick up.
Can you see the screen now? I disabled my video.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mine is actually quite close to the to what you have read. So the best, I put a bracket leader because the original text doesn't show that part. So or anything bracket is kind of expansion by me. The best is the one who is barely known to the subordinates. And the next best is the one who is endeared and praised. The next is the one who is feared. And the next is despised. One who gives not full trust, receives no trust. The best one is of few words and gets work done without fuss. And everyone would say everything works itself out naturally. And I put some notes there. I think the first paragraph are all almost similar to or among the different translations.
Yeah.
Apart from different words. The next paragraph, the first line and the last line, and particularly the last line, can be very different.
Yep.
The other translation basically all interpret that the effect of people are basically saying we did it ourselves. I prefer, I actually in favor of being interpreted as everything works itself out naturally. And I put some notes there. What's been said in the original text is a three character, 我自然, can be directly translated as word for word, I naturally, or I self-emerging. So I interpret I as a self. And self, it could be not necessarily mean the subject. It could also be the object. So things is sort of worked out to self. Because from logically, people haven't anticipated anything, haven't actually, indeed, if they haven't done anything, why would they say, oh, we did it? If it's a work that's being done behind the scene by the leader and engage various things quietly. And particularly in the author's view, the best approach by a leader is a wu wei, non-doing, meaning really things are all worked out by itself naturally. Because anything is done by humans selectively, inevitably there will cause adverse impact. So in author's mind, the best approach is always let things done by self. How? If we come to verse 40, we will see that the original one of the text, the original text is basically did mention about that it is through the opposites interaction that Tao transform all beings. So Tao doesn't do anything, and yet nothing is undone because of this. Because there is yin yang existed among everything. This a pair of opposites always works as a power that transform all beings. Anything that exists as a being in constantly transforming because of that. And also that's why the world seemingly exhibits its dual quality, and because of that.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I like that
interesting.
point.
Go ahead, Alice.
I was just gonna say, I like that point. Yeah, that the whole, all the world, we have these opposites that, according to like A Course in Miracles, that's what's caused the separation. So in order for love to know itself, it had to separate, so it would have an opposite. Like the painting, I did a painting called The Meaning of Life, and it's got a candle in a brightly lit room, and you can barely see the flame because it's, there's so much light. And then the other one is just shows a candle in the dark, and obviously the candle's very bright and you can see it very well. You can see that flame. So that's that opposite, light and dark. You can't have, pain without pleasure, and vice versa. So yeah, and everything's always constantly changing and evolving. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Okay.
Yeah,
This is pretty interesting because here we have an example of like I'm looking at like Mitchell's here, and he's basically pointing out the fact that the master's working in the background doing whatever, and people have a tendency to have big egos and think that they're responsible for what goes on. And so everyone's going, look what we did, amazing, how cool we are. And the master is smiling, going, no, it's not quite like that. But they're not ready to hear that. And So I see this because I like looking at ego. I like looking at the fact that people like to take credit for things when they're not aware of the fact that the energies that move inside of us, desire and things like that, are what get us to do what we do. And we have this picture of ourselves as being the controller and the doer and all that kind of stuff, and it's really not true. So anyway, I gravitate toward what Mitchell's version is here because that's my perspective on what I'm seeing right now. But I can see how others would see it a little bit differently. The problem I have with everything works itself out naturally is that's hard to understand uh, if you've got a big ego. That's really hard to understand. It's very true, of course, but it's hard to understand. So I, what we were talking about earlier is how people can have different viewpoints of things. I wish I could understand. I knew the language, and I could look at these characters and see what I would see and come up with what I would say. But all I've got is what I've read from other people, and I'm just gravitating toward the egoic part of it. So I think it's interesting how that works with people. Like we're all sort of blind. We're all in our own bubbles of perception, and we see what we can see, and something that's outside that's not apparent to us we completely miss, and it may be the essence of the whole thing. So it's good to be just to know that.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate that point. Actually, it's yeah, like you said, from ordinary people point of view, they probably would yeah would think they did it or some sort. It depends on the situation, I guess, whether they are truly being engaged in anything or not.
Yeah.
From the original text point of view, in my note, I already basically put the original text word for word, so reader can also come up their own conclusion based on what was presented.
Also, I think it's interesting that the whoever wrote this, Lao Tzu or whoever it was, they had their particular perspective on things, and it was an extremely excellent one. I mean, when you read the whole Tao, I can't think of a better spiritual document that I've ever looked at than the Tao. I think it's just almost perfect. Um, so there was a high sense of consciousness with whoever wrote this. However, they're not 100% in touch with total absolute truth all the time either. So they're going to write it the way they see it at that time that they wrote it. And so I kind of see like the intelligence of it, the awareness of it, the emptiness of it, the darkness within the darkness, where everything comes out of. That's the Tao, and so things come out of that, and then they're seen um, by consciousness, and depending on how observant consciousness is and how aware of its own depth that it will see things in a certain way. And so anything that we read that's about something that can't be spoken about, I mean, like the first, what is it, the Tao that can't be named, it's not the real Tao. You can't even name the thing. So it's got all the possibilities in it, and it's got all the truth in it. And so everyone comes along once in a while and reads it or gets a feel for it, does a translation or whatever, and it's always not going to be perfect. It's always going to have some of their own egoic viewpoints in it. So I think when you can step back from even the translation, the original words, even that, just step back from that completely and just be in a place where something's going on that's not understandable very well. We have no idea what's really going on. You know, is this a dream? Is it real? Is it a computer simulation? We have no idea. It's going on, it's happening, and then we're self-reflecting, trying to find truth. We're trying to find what's really going on within us, and to explain all that's going on so that we can live better and get along better. And we can't quite get to it. You cannot quite understand the Tao completely, but you can get little bits and pieces and little visions, and then those can be written about. So what we're talking about is really something that can't be translated, but just has to be experienced on the deepest level that you're possibly able to do.
Yeah, I agree that when we are touching something that is absolute, that is non-being or unnameable, and then it is beyond the words, and it requires not only understand in a language level, but also on a spiritual level, and how much the self-aware and the realization involved, and even you understand it, you may not be able to put it in the right words. So there are so many levels of difficulties involved. I agree, yeah. And
It's just
having said that, I think we individual, we all have the capacity to reach to the state like the author did. That's a potential. I mean, there is a Tao within us.
yep, we're all connected to it, and we're all going to have our own version of it. And to some people, it won't mean anything, and to other people, it will mean everything. And that's really nice to observe and see what's going on inside yourself when you get in touch with it too.
The other thing I have observed is, or I speculating that the author actually made effort not to be known, because the author identified self not as the individual, but as the source that is unnameable.
Yeah.
So he made sure about that, or
Yeah.
he or she. So yeah, the author is truly walk the talk.
Yeah, the Satoshi Nakamoto of the Tao. If you know anything about Bitcoin, because the guy who did Bitcoin doesn't want to be known who he is either. Yeah.
Well, that was our 7:30 mark. So,
Okay.
are we okay moving on to 18?
Yeah, remarkably, yeah, good timing.
Okay. 18. When the great Tao is forgotten, kindness and morality arise. When wisdom and intelligence are born, the great pretense begins. When there is no peace within the family, I don't know this word, I'm sorry. Filial piety and devotion arise. To look that one up. When the country is confused and in chaos, loyal ministers appear. Filial?
Philly, yeah, I think it's related. Isn't it related, Paigey, to the clergy?
Filial? That would make sense.
Let me check. I haven't got, my screen's kind of frozen, and I can't see the original text. I need to go back to my.
Okay. Well, for essence of time, it makes sense in context. So, from the cards, this one's entitled Learning. Dispense with your learning and save yourself anxiety. The difference between certain and perhaps is not much after all. Can learning help one distinguish between good and evil? Alas, but the learned will never be free from their folly. They are filled with ambition, as the bowl is filled with lust.
Yeah.
I like that one, even though it's not really.
Well, it's interesting because it's a different way of looking at the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, essential Tao. When the great way is deserted, then there is humanitarian duty. When intelligence comes forth, there is great fabrication. When relations are discordant, then there is family love. When the national when the national polity, I can't say that, polity. I wanted to say something else there.
Piety.
Piety. No, it's not piety. Polity. Polity. Polity, like policy, or I don't know.
Like politics, maybe.
Yeah. When the national polity is benighted and confused, then there are loyal ministers. So that one's more like the original, but it's again very different. Finally, Ursula Le Guin. This one's entitled Second Bests. In the degradation of the great way come benevolence and righteousness. With the I can't say that word right now.
Exalted?
No, with the exaltation. There we go. Exaltation. There you go. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm really tired too. With the exaltation of learning and prudence comes immense hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. The disordered family is full of dutiful children and parents. The disordered society is full of loyal patriots. Huh. That's interesting.
Is that your last one?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's Mitchell's. I like this. When the great Tao is forgotten, goodness and piety appear. When the body's intelligence declines, cleverness and knowledge step forth. When there is no peace in the family, filial piety begins. When the country falls into chaos, patriotism is born.
They are very close, except the third line, which is quite hard to interpret. And mine is opposite to that what Mitchell has translated. But I can understand why he translated that way. He translated that way is because the original text can be translated either as out, as emerging, or as emerging or as an exit. So it's almost opposite. That's the original text. So Mitchell choose to translate that way is basically based on the semantic, because the first few lines. Okay, let me read my full translation. I explain why I translate this way. When great Tao is abandoned, humanity and righteousness emerge. When wits and intelligence arise, great falsehoods emerge. When a family clan falls into discord, suddenly dutifulness and a motherly love emerge. When the state is in chaos, loyal patriots emerge.
Loyal, what was the last line?
Loyal patriots. My pronunciation, patriots.
Patriots, okay.
Yeah, patriots emerge.
I like that translation better, because this was making it sound like when the family's in chaos, then dutiful. I was kind of getting confused there, and you cleared it all up for me. It's just meaning people, they step up in times of need, is really what that's kind of saying there. So maybe when the family's disordered or dysfunctional, then you've got those children that step up and they help out, like if you want to put that into modern times, and you've got a dysfunctional family and the single mom, then a lot of time the kids will shape up, and they'll start working early to help earn money. And so yeah, and then when the country, is going through a revolution, then you start getting,
Yeah, the
patriotism. And
patriots. Yeah,
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 people
uh,
step up when stuff starts getting bad. And I
yeah,
think we saw that a lot in times of war, um, World War I, especially. Uh, a lot of people just coming together, to support the country and support each other.
yeah.
So
The the we all know in the early days, family usually is an extended family, like a tribe, and all the kids, all the elderly are looked after not just by one single family, but by the whole family clan or the tribe. But when that sort of a relationship fall to discord, and then individual family have to pick it up. That's why the emerges those I translate as a motherly love and the sonly dutifulness. What is similar to what's been translated by Mitchell about particular words which are now not commonly used. I just feel translated in the sonly dutifulness and the motherly love more. I guess wiser reflect the unconditional love that usually shown by elders and particularly the mother. And in relation to the dutifulness, and I emphasize sonly dutifulness, reflect the reality at the time. Usually, daughter usually already married out, and it is the son they usually stay with their parents, and they have to pick up the responsibility. So it's not in a sexism way, because it does cover both male and the female role at the end.
I got a different take here on this completely. I think what you both of you are saying, especially in the last sentence, is you're saying when the country starts falling apart, then patriotism is born, and that's great. That's a good thing that's going to save the country from falling apart. Am I mistaken, or is that the way you're interpreting it?
yeah, no, that's the way I'm
The
interpreting it. Yeah.
Okay. You also?
I not quite. Firstly, what the author was telling is always emphasize, make observation. It does not necessarily give any weight on what we shouldn't do. He is merely to point the reality.
Yeah.
I think what the author is try to telling us is we are really need to look at the root cause. We actually need to go back to our original nature. So anything that like humanity and righteousness, all those for dutifulness, all those stuff sounds great, sounds the solution, but actually as a result of we have lost in touch with the Tao, or put the other way, we lost in touch with our original nature. If everybody exhibit their original nature, nothing need to be emphasized about the humanity, about duty, about the morality, because that's our original nature. But because we have attached to that, we have been deluded by the phenomenon, and that's the result. I think that's what the author is trying to say, and this will be clearer in the next chapter, I think.
Um, yeah. Okay. So what I'm saying is basically kind of what you're saying, Peji, where um, it looks like on the surface, someone might say to that, "Oh, okay, the country falls into chaos, and then patriotism comes, and that's going to save the country." But that's the problem. It's like Trump comes along, and he whips up people's patriotism for the country. That's how they see the country, and of course that's in conflict with how a lot of other people see the country. So they use patriotism as a word to to grab a hold of somebody and say this is what's patriotic and this is what isn't. When the true patriotism is patriotism to the truth, or patriotism to our natural selves, or patriotism to God, or oneness, or however you want to say it. And the way he puts it here is really good, because he starts out and says, when the Tao is forgotten, now goodness and piety appear. So, like, we don't need that stuff. We don't need goodness and piety. And when there's no peace in the family, filial piety begins. So all these things are seen, like, by people as being a way to stop the problem that's happening, which is the dissolution of oneness, the dissolution of being one with the Tao, the dissolution of the way things really should be in the natural way. And then we branch off and we get separated into factions, and then we begin battling each other over these differences. And so I think it's really really cool, the way he's done it. And then because it's easy to mistake what he's saying unless you're in touch with something down deeper inside. Then you'll completely miss it, and then you'll be following Donald Trump to make the country greater again, that kind of thing. But this is brilliant.
Yeah, and I agree with you too, also. I wish we didn't need those kind of circumstances to bring us back, to help us remember that sense of love and caring towards one another. So yeah, when the Tao is forgotten, which it is now, in most modern society, it is forgotten. And we need times of crisis like this pandemic to kind of bring us back to that sense of oneness, to that sense of caring, for thy neighbor, and loving others. So that's kind of how I look at it. It's like, because we've forgotten where we've come from, we've lost our way. But there are things that can bring us back into, maybe, there are these false senses of oneness and God, or they're not the true way, but at least they're giving us a glimpse of it. So I kind of look at this as being kind of hopeful that it's there. And yeah, sometimes tough love, right? We need to learn the hard way to get back in touch with that. So.
Yeah, definitely. The Tao is within us. And it just most of us forgot, or deluded, and got that cloud of minds, which prevent us from seeing it. And but the nature will work it out, and it's just a matter of there will be a collateral damage. There is no doubt about that. That's a part of the nature. So yeah, everything will work it out, but just depends on what sort of experience we wish to go through. And yeah,
It's almost like the Tao is awakening to itself, and it's finding itself splattered out into individuals, and like every planet in the universe that's got life forms on it, they're conscious. Like consciousness wakes up and it realizes, look what's going on, and it tries to make sense of it, and it doesn't know what's really going on until it gets really deep into its own nature. So as each of us gets deeper and deeper into our real nature, that's the waking up process of the Tao to itself, is the way I would look at that.
So the Peace Pilgrim, that's, I've just been I'm going to keep mentioning her again because so inspired by her. She talks about, so she started off doing all these loving, caring things and trying to help so many people. And then she realized later on that she wasn't helping them by helping them. She realized that each person has their own path to walk and their own lessons to learn. And if you take away their pain or suffering, like if you're a healer and you just take away the symptom, then they're never going to get to the root cause of why they're having to experience this in this life, so that they can grow closer to the way or God or energy or whatever. Sorry, I say that a lot. So um,
That's actually, yeah, very true. And that's why it's so great that the book point out a role model, which is the sage. And what sage do, he doesn't judge. He accepts everyone, good or bad. He trusts everyone, good or bad. So for anyone who truly accepting anything and any beings, then he would do things or she would do things, not necessarily try to change others, right? If you try to change others, you're not really truly accepting. So here, the Wu Wei also comes in play. I think if you look at the whole book, there are a couple of things mentioned about can be considered enlightenment. One is to see, to know the absolute, the source, the ultimate reality. That's enlightenment. And there is text on that. And then next one is if you can follow Wu Wei or non-doing, then that's another enlightenment. And then if you able to not see yourself, that's another enlightenment. You identify yourself not as an individual. And the next one is if you can actually attend to the small thing, that's enlightenment.
the small thing?
Yeah, that's the small thing. And anything that are seemingly small, if you can attend to that, that's enlightenment.
So like pay attention to? Is that what you mean by attend to it?
This is hard. The original word is truly saying no, to actually know. The word is a know. Knowing the small is enlightenment. There is one verse I can point to you later, but the others doesn't translate as an interpretation or as a enlightenment. But the original text is literally meaning enlightenment. It meaning that when an object is received the light, it's not only reflect light from its surface actually went through, internally illuminates. So you can see the object internally. So that's really can be translated even in the literal sense is enlightenment. And yeah, knowing the small, I won't be long. Knowing the small, I try to emphasize that point. It can also relate it to anyone want to do good deeds, and often we do this inevitably with our ego attached. We want to do something in big, and we also try to do something to change others. Now, the book is actually talking about the small things, and that's what the Tao does. Make you not feel it. And yeah, that's all I want to say at the moment. Yeah. Sorry, Brian.
That's okay. I think it's interesting when you think about the word enlightenment, because that points to a place that you get to eventually. And I see enlightenment as a process, and I don't think there's an end to it at all. I see that something's waking up Like we call it love, like in a relationship, like you get to the point with the person you can't tell where you stop and they start. You feel this one loving conscious energy that's swirling around in the middle of both of you, and you both are aware of it. I think that is that loving conscious energy recognizing itself as one thing, and that we call it love, but we're not loving somebody else. That oneness of conscious energy is becoming more and more aware of its own existence as one thing. And that's not two. That's not two separate people. It's just this one thing. And I think that is essentially waking up to its own existence as one thing. And it knows of itself just a little bit so far. And more, the more we come together in whatever way, will that will continue to wake up to its own existence, and it's coming out of the Tao. It's coming out of a place that can't be named or can't be known. So there's this ongoing, self-reflective, energetic awakening happening to this one thing with no name, realizing it's not an individual person, it's not a group of people, it's something else completely differently. It doesn't even know what it is. And so humans come up with this word of enlightenment without really grasping that. They think it's a place to get to, but it doesn't exist. That's okay, because what really exists is already what it is. It's already this one thing. It's just a question of getting your attention on it and realizing that no one's looking at it because you're not who you think you are. It's just waking up to itself.
I think you would like this really good. Sorry, PJ. Um, Again, I'm going to go with the Peace Pilgrim. She has this analogy about, when she never called it enlightenment, but she did reach a form of enlightenment, and that she knew she had arrived one night when she went walking, because she realized she never had to lose contact with love, with the one. She was in a constant state of oneness with everything and everybody. She called it, she never had to come down from that hilltop anymore. And she actually saw lights around people. She saw like light halos around everything, creatures, people. So I think that's kind of where that idea of enlightenment comes from, because she could see that light. Energy body is what I would call it. But the analogy she gave is that when she got there, she felt like she was a puzzle that had been put together. But she said, you never stop learning, and you never stop arriving. You're always constantly, every moment, arriving. And it's just, so she's the middle part of the puzzle that's been completed now. But there's always constantly being more pieces added to the edge, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I just think that's a beautiful analogy, because once you do find your wholeness and you're there, and it can just be for a moment, it will start getting, those moments will start getting longer and longer, she says, until there comes a point where you never have to leave that moment anymore. You never have to leave that oneness.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah. Practice, right? It just takes constant practice of being aware and vigilant of those thoughts. And yeah.
And seeing your ego for what it is, seeing all the things you think you know and understand and have got down, seeing all that for what it is too.
But just listening will bring you to that.
Yeah. You see, that ego thing, probably a lot to do with the way our brain, the left brain works. Our left brain is basically functioning as an analyst, analyze the data that is being accumulating, and constantly in a surviving mode, which is great, which will save you to relearn the experience you had, and you can do a quick action. But that's positive side. The negative side is you basically restrict your mind into the past data. And so if we are able to switch off that sort of part of the brain and let our right side of brain to function, I guess we will see things are in more right now sort of state, and would see things as it is, and probably will intuit the oneness more easily.
And attend to the small, right? Is it the small?
Yeah. And you will not, yeah. I don't know if you guys read the book called Prophecy's Way by Thomas. He's the radio joker now, I think. And in the book, he's also mentioned his teacher, who is a highly enlightened person, a German. And he also mentioned about attending small things, like save small creature, things like that. And preferably discreetly, not known to anyone.
The little things that we call little that aren't really little.
Yeah, because why? Because everything is connected. When we emphasize things like cause effect, we try to identify what we think is an important factor. The reality is everything contributes. We know the butterfly, effect. A small puff can cause the storm. So really everything is connected. And that's why in the book mentioned about heaven and earth treats you everything as a straw dog. And the sage would do the same. Why? Because we all unique, but we are nothing, no one is special. We are all share the same importance.
Well, our time is up. I think that's a good thing to start on. So
to conclude,
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Brent, before we leave? Or
Just that this has been a phenomenal meeting, and I think we've gotten to a nice place. Whenever I get to a place where I realize that enlightenment is a process, I feel pretty good about that.
well, just like I say, just a little bit every day, you can get closer and closer. Just those little moments, they start adding up and they start getting bigger and bigger. So
yeah, I wish to thank you guys for the opportunity. I know I talked too much, but forgive me the first time.
We really enjoyed having you. Thank you so much. So
thank you.
And yes, take care.
Right. Bye-bye. See you next time.
Yes, looking forward to it.